Jake had always been fearless. Known among his friends and climbing communities as someone who chased the most dangerous routes in the Rockies, he thrived on the adrenaline that came with heights and sheer cliffs. On that chilly morning, he packed his gear meticulously: ropes, carabiners, emergency supplies, and enough food for a multi-day expedition. The Colorado mountains were breathtaking, but treacherous, with hidden crevices, unstable rock formations, and sudden weather changes that could turn a perfect day into a nightmare. Jake waved goodbye to his family, promising he'd be back by nightfall, completely unaware that this climb would soon turn into a nightmare no one could have predicted. The trail started off as expected, winding through narrow ridges and towering rock faces. Jake's movements were fluid, almost rhythmic, as he ascended higher into the mountain. But by mid-afternoon, the weather began to shift unexpectedly. Thick fog rolled in, swallowing the cliffs and reducing visibility to almost nothing. Rocks that had seemed solid moments before began to feel unstable under his boots, and a cold wind sliced through his jacket. Jake tried calling out, hoping someone might hear, but his voice was carried away by the mountain's echoing canyons. By the time the fog thickened into a near whiteout, Jake had vanished from sight, leaving nothing behind but the faint trace of footprints in the dirt. By evening, when he failed to return, concern quickly escalated. His family called authorities, describing the routes he'd planned to take and the usual time frame of his climbs. Search teams were dispatched immediately, combing the mountains from base to peak, shining flashlights into dark crevices and checking every ledge and canyon. Helicopters circled overhead, but the dense fog and rapidly descending nightfall made the search nearly impossible. Days passed, and each day the hope of finding Jake alive dimmed, as no clues, no rope, no gear, no footprints were discovered beyond the initial trail. The mountains had swallowed him whole, and the air was thick with the unnerving silence of the wilderness, leaving friends, family, and rescuers haunted by the mystery of his sudden disappearance. As the search dragged on week after week, the disbelief among the rescuers and Jake's loved ones only grew. How could a man vanish so completely in a place he knew like the back of his hand? Some speculated he might have fallen into one of the deep, hidden crevices that riddled the Rockies, while others whispered that he could be trapped behind a rock face that no one had dared explore. Every inch of the mountain seemed to mock the search efforts: narrow ledges, overhangs, and jagged cliffs that looked impossible to traverse without risking a fatal slip. The locals started sharing their own eerie theories. Maybe Jake had fallen victim to an avalanche that buried him out of sight, or perhaps the mountain itself had swallowed him, leaving no trace of his presence behind. Months passed with little evidence. Rescue teams had turned over every conceivable route, but the trails were gone, erased by wind, rain, and snow. His backpack, containing the few supplies he had started with, was eventually found at the base of a cliff, torn and battered by the elements. There was no sign of him nearby, no footprints leading away, no rope snagged on jagged rocks, nothing that could explain where he had gone or how he had managed to survive. Friends and family clung to hope, but even the most optimistic among them admitted that the chances of seeing him alive were slipping further into impossibility with each passing day. Yet, amid the growing despair, strange reports began to trickle in. Some hikers claimed to have glimpsed a figure in the distance, clinging to impossible ledges or moving in ways that defied the steep terrain. Others said they heard faint shouts, carried by the wind, too faint to pinpoint, but unmistakably human. While skeptics dismissed these sightings as tricks of the imagination or echoes in the canyon, the rumors spread, keeping a fragile thread of hope alive. The thought that Jake might still be out there, somewhere on those unforgiving cliffs, alive against all odds, haunted everyone, adding a growing tension to the mountains that seemed almost sentient in their silence. 3 months had passed since Jake disappeared, and the mountains had grown quieter, almost eerie, as if holding their secrets tightly. Search efforts had slowed, with many assuming the worst, but a small team of volunteers refused to give up. Among them was Mark, a local drone enthusiast, who suggested scanning the cliffs from above. Equipped with a high-resolution drone and a camera capable of piercing through fog and shadow, Mark flew over ledges and hidden ravines that human eyes could never reach safely. As the drone hummed above the jagged terrain, everyone held their breath, knowing that every second in the cold, treacherous Rockies mattered. Then, as the drone rounded a seemingly ordinary cliff face, the camera caught something that made hearts stop. At first, it looked like a shadow, a trick of light on the rock. But then the figure shifted, gripping the edge of a tiny vertical ledge. Jake, alive. The footage showed him barely hanging on, his body emaciated, clothes torn and frozen by the relentless mountain weather. His movements were slow, deliberate, and full of struggle. Each second on that cliff was a battle against gravity, exhaustion, and the biting cold. It was a sight so shocking and surreal that the team on the ground froze in disbelief, unable to tear their eyes away from the live feed. The revelation sent shockwaves through the rescue operation. Jake had been in plain sight the entire time, yet in a place so remote and hidden that no searcher could have spotted him from the ground. The drone revealed not only the precarious ledge, but also the surrounding terrain, sheer drops on every side, jagged rocks that could have ended his life with a single misstep, and narrow pathways that even the most experienced climbers wouldn't dare navigate. As the live footage played, it became painfully clear that every day he had survived was nothing short of miraculous. The team now faced a new challenge: how to reach him in one piece before time, or the mountain claimed him for good. From the drone footage, it became horrifyingly clear just how desperate Jake's situation had been. The ledge he clung to was no wider than a couple of feet, with sheer drops on every side, and the constant wind sliced through his weakened body like icy blades. Days, weeks, and months had passed, and yet he had managed to survive in near total isolation. His water supply had long since vanished, leaving him to rely on melting snow and the occasional stream trickle that managed to find its way down the cliff. Every sip was a gamble, and every movement required careful calculation, lest a single slip send him tumbling into the jagged canyon below. Food was even scarcer. Jake had scavenged what he could: small insects, edible moss, and the occasional wild berry he spotted clinging to life in hidden crevices. Each meal was tiny, almost symbolic, yet it kept him alive just enough to continue clinging to hope and to the cliff itself. His hands were blistered and frostbitten. His muscles screamed in agony with each movement, and yet somehow he refused to give in. The harsh Colorado sun by day and bone-chilling cold by night made survival a relentless challenge. Even sleeping was a calculated risk. One wrong movement in his sleep could mean the end of everything. As the drone's camera zoomed in, viewers could see Jake's eyes, wide and haunted, reflecting a mixture of fear, determination, and the raw will to live. His body was frail, nearly skeletal, yet he refused to let go. He had become one with the cliff, almost part of it, as if the rocks themselves had become both his prison and his lifeline. Every storm that battered him, every wind gust that threatened to pull him from the ledge, only strengthened his resolve. The mountain was merciless, but Jake's survival instincts were sharper, honed to perfection by desperation. Each day was a battle against hunger, fatigue, and the elements, and every heartbeat was a testament to his unyielding spirit. Once the drone footage confirmed Jake's location, the rescue operation swung into high gear. A team of highly trained climbers and a helicopter unit were dispatched, but the mountain wasn't about to make it easy. Gale force winds howled through the jagged peaks, sending clouds of snow and debris swirling around the cliffside. Every approach was dangerous. One wrong step could trigger a deadly slide or send rescuers plummeting down the canyon. As the helicopter hovered above the sheer rock face, the pilot struggled against the gusts, trying to find a safe path for the rescue climbers to descend. Tension gripped everyone on the ground, knowing that both Jake and the rescuers were at the mercy of the mountain's unforgiving terrain. From above, the climbers assessed the narrow ledge, realizing the precariousness of the situation. Every foothold was treacherous, every handhold brittle, and the rock itself seemed to protest under their weight. One miscalculation could send them tumbling alongside Jake. Slowly, deliberately, the rescuers made their way toward him, shouting words of encouragement over the roaring wind. Jake, weakened but aware, tried to hold his balance and respond, his body trembling from exhaustion and cold. The suspense was almost unbearable. One false move could undo months of survival, yet each moment brought them closer to the man who had defied the odds. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a rescue rope reached Jake's hands. His fingers, raw and bleeding, clutched the lifeline as the rescuers worked to secure him. Every pull, every inch of ascent, was a battle against gravity, wind, and fatigue. The helicopter hovered as close as safely possible, its blades stirring the icy air, while the climbers slowly lifted Jake from the cliff's edge. He was weak, frostbitten, and barely conscious, yet alive, a miraculous testament to human endurance. The mountains, silent witnesses to his ordeal, loomed around him, indifferent yet awe-inspiring. As the rescue team finally secured him and began the painstaking journey to safety. As Jake was finally lifted into the helicopter, the reality of his survival began to sink in. Months alone, clinging to a cliff no wider than a ledge, had tested every limit of human endurance, and he had defied them all. The mountains that had once seemed so merciless now stood as silent witnesses to his courage, their jagged peaks casting long shadows over a story that no one could have imagined. Back on solid ground, Jake looked up at the cliff one last time, the place that had been both his prison and his lifeline. He knew he had cheated death by sheer will, by determination that refused to break, and by the narrowest thread of luck. The footage captured by the drone would soon go viral, leaving millions around the world in awe, and some in disbelief, at the incredible struggle he had endured. But even as cameras flashed and rescue teams celebrated, a quiet question lingered in the minds of everyone who heard his story. How had one man survived for 3 months in the unforgiving Colorado Rockies, invisible and alone, defying the mountain itself? It was a mystery, a miracle, and a reminder of both the fragility and the incredible strength of the human spirit.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.